I'm actually just going to tell you one like fun fact. When Kat and I started at the very beginning, we started with events for women in Toronto because we felt like moms never had a place to get away without kids and have conversations. And so we would host these events in Toronto. And we'd bring in experts and all this. And then we started to realize that so many of the members, because they were members of our club back then, were getting divorced and they didn't really have any resources of where they could turn. So we started hosting dinners where the people in our community that were divorced could come and make connections and like get advice from each other, because there's everything. I mean, like, everything from legal to parenting and all that. And it's been years since we hosted those, but some of those women are still like in communication and friends since meeting. And they were so thankful because they had nowhere to go. And back then too, everyone was married. So there was only a handful of divorcees and they feel like everyone's speaking another language and I can't relate. So
yeah, you're preaching to the choir.
Totally get that.
Okay. All right, guys. We have Jessica and TH. What does TH stand for?
Tracy Heather, but it's always been TH.
I love that.
And my Canadian grandmother is the only reason that my name is TH. My family's from Toronto and Ottawa and
you're one of us.
Quebec. A few splattered around.
Okay,
I don't know
I love it.
But my aunt still lives in Toronto.
Nice. So you guys are the co-founders of ExExperts and the Divorce Etc. podcast. You guys are besties who got divorced at the same time and had each other through it all due to a lack of resources. You built the ExExperts and the Divorce Etc. podcast. You are speaking loud and proud. Divorce sucks, but it doesn't define you unless you let it. You've lived and get it, and help you through the education and support to your own life through your choices. And you need to be your biggest advocate for divorce. That was sort of an overview of how that all went down. But can you guys just tell us a little bit from the beginning?
Like how
are we recording? You want us to get into it?
We are recording.
We want to know how all this shit went
down.
Jessica likes to tell the story.
Okay.
Yeah, I do like to tell the story. The reason that TH and I connected, I've been married and divorced twice, by the way, so I really am an ex-expert.
I love it.
The reason that TH and I connected is because my first husband and TH were best friends in high school.
Hold on one second. Your ex-husband and your
TH.
best friend were
my best
friends.
friend in high school became her husband.
And were you guys friends in high school?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
I didn't grow up near them. I met him in college.
Okay.
So through him, I met her.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Yeah. So when he and I met, I kept hearing about his best friend TH all the time. She came up to our school for a Halloween party. And this was like going to be the first time I was going to meet her. And so I see her come in and I go like running over to her and I'm like, oh my God, you're TH. And she looks at me and she's like, where's Darren? And I go over to him and I'm like, that's your best friend? She's a bitch.
Okay, so I don't remember the story, but now I feel like I do remember it because we've said it so many times. And if you can imagine, Jessica is literally this big. And you pregame before a party in college and we're dressed up for Halloween and I'm at a huge frat party and this little pixie thing runs up to me in my face. I'm not surprised that was my response, honestly. Like, who are you? You're in my space and where's Darren?
Have you heard about her before?
That's my side of the story.
She hadn't, evidently.
No, I didn't.
Oh. How long have you been together?
No, a month and a half in college. It was and she went somewhere else. And so, but I didn't know that.
But she was into him and he was like a hot shot,
P.S.
Darren.
Several years later, once we'd all graduated and lived in New York City, she and I kind of like re-met, whatever, and like totally bonded and became friends. And she was dating her soon-to-be husband. The guys were best friends. She and I were best friends. And then for the next number of years, like we would do all the couples things together, traveled around the world together, like started our families. Our boys are a week apart. Like we met through him. And then, as we like to say, we kept each other in the divorce.
So Darren and TH's husband, really just like, that was such a score that the husbands actually became best friends.
Well,
a score at the time.
My ex actually didn't like Darren at first, but then he did like him because they aligned in more ways than I think they realized. So that'll
how many years ago was that?
Oh my God.
Well, we got married in
almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And how long were you a happily foursome, traveling the world and having babies and being best friends?
I would say she and
yourself.
Right. I mean, we got engaged within a month of each other, married within a month of each other. We were married for 13 years and then found out within a week of each other that both of our husbands were cheating on us and covering for each other's affairs.
Were
traveling.
Together.
Yeah, and covering for one another.
They were covering for each other's. Yeah.
How did they find the girl? How did they find? Did they find best?
The girls? No. The girl. I think the girls met through them, and then we found out that like trips that they had been going on that were guys' trips. Well, we thought just our husbands going on guys' trips,
and you're like so cute,
right? Turns out they were like going to the Costa Rica to the Four Seasons in Costa Rica with their girlfriends as couples while we were together. While we were home. Yes. While we were home,
we were working,
taking care of the kids and working.
Yeah. How long was that going on for?
Wait. I literally don't want you to move from that pose because it's hysterical. And I love to see the way people react, but wait till there's more. So it all happened at the same time, except I got a phone call a few days later after Jessica figured her situation out.
After my phone call.
Right. I was in a place where I never answer the phone. You don't get service. I'm picking up my 4-year-old. I have a new housekeeper in the front seat. I have 2 older kids. I had just finished work. So I need to pick him up, take him to karate, go pick up my other kids, get everybody where they needed to be. So I get this phone call and the person.
You get the phone call first.
I got a phone call like several days prior. So I already knew where I was going. And then a few days after my situation, TH gets this call.
Right.
I also want to know about both the phone calls. TH first.
So I am on the carpool line and this woman's calling me and I think she's selling insurance because she's asking me my name. She's asking me if I'm married to my husband, says his name. I'm like, yes. I'm like, are you selling me insurance or something? She goes, no. She said, I'm actually engaged to your husband.
No.
And I said, how do you know it's the same guy? She goes, well, I've met your kids. I said, you just saved my life. I got to call you back. And that was the best day of my life.
For real. Wait, why were you so happy?
Because I was so suffocating in a marriage with a man who was so bad to me. He was horrible.
Okay.
So I was like paralyzed in my marriage. Jessica and I were traveling even up to like 6 months before we got our phone calls, not even talking about it because we were in denial. We didn't even talk about it with each other, how unhappy we were. Because if you talk about it, then it's real. So we were like,
that's a really
fully in denial.
Okay, Jess, were you still best friends with Darren? At the point, like, did you guys keep your friendship or no?
No, it was TH and Darren that were friends.
No.
No. Best friends with Darren was my husband.
The answer is no. And he actually called me like the day after I called my ex. And I was like, listen, I spoke to her and I'm never living with you again. So then Darren calls me the next day and he's like, hey, T. And I'm like, what are you fucking calling me for? Like, we're friends now? He goes, listen, I just want you to know, I do think you should divorce him. I'm like, well, thanks. And where have you been for like 4 years while he's living a double life in California?
TH, when Darren calls you, do you know about Jessica's situation?
Yeah. Jessica's situation happened first. Mine happened 5 days later.
Okay, I want to know about Jessica's call.
So I was home one night and Darren used to go out pretty much every night. I worked in morning TV, so my hours were like pretty early in the morning. So he was often out with his friends, and I thought I always knew who he was going out with.
Who's watching the kids when he's out and you're not home?
She's home.
She left in the morning.
You're home in the evenings, and he's out with his friends.
Right. So I would get home, and then he would go out at whatever, 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Okay, but I'm home.
Just before you finish answering that, I'm going to take a quick break, and then you're going to come back and get the phone call because this is too.
Well, I also want to know where the fuck if he's going out every night. Like, where is he going? Does people just get to socialize every night
with his friends? Okay, we'll be right back. Okay, yeah. Sorry. Go on. So he's out with his friends. Okay, so you're working every
listen,
night.
we were, keep in mind though, we were also like, we were still pretty young. We all got married really young. I was 23. So even at this point, like we were like in our early 30s. So people were still going out.
You need to explain your career and his career to explain the going out and the
but also just that he also still had a lot of single friends. I mean, we were in our early 30s.
In New York.
Yes. And like I said, I worked in TV. I was a TV producer for a national morning show, and he had like just transitioned into real estate. So he was like out schmoozing a lot of times. Like we belonged to like a members only club in the city. Like there were places that I knew where he was going, and I knew all of his best guy friends and who vouched for him. And so I kind of knew. And so they were a lot of times were going out with him too. In any case. It was a rare night that he was home. So I'm home, I'm watching TV, he's in the bedroom sleeping.
My heart's racing. I'm really nervous right now.
And the phone rings. This is like back in the day of landlines, totally aging myself. And the phone rings and I answered, and it's this like frantic woman whose voice I don't recognize. And she's like, telling me that she needs to speak to him about a new real estate development that I know to be true.
Okay.
Nearby where we lived. And that they were bringing it to market, and they were in the staging phase, and she was standing outside on the street with artwork and needed the code to get into the building. All sounded fine to me. So I was like, hold on a minute. So I go into the bedroom, he's asleep, and I don't give him the background of the call because I'm like, I'm just going to hand him the phone. I'll give her the code, whatever. Like I really didn't think anything of it. So I sit down on the bed and I hand him the phone, and he's like, he gets on the phone and then he starts having a conversation. Like, no, I'm not going out tonight. No, whatever. It's like has nothing to do with the property and nothing to do with the code. So he hangs up and I'm like, who the fuck was that? And now he's like frozen kind of. And so he tells me that it's his assistant, and I knew his assistant's voice. And I'm like, no, it's not. And then he's like, well, maybe it was, maybe she was disguising her voice, or maybe when she called, it was, whatever, this other person. I'm like, no, it wasn't. Idiot. I know her voice too. Yeah. So I was like, so then he starts getting all defensive. Like, I don't know. I was sleeping. And I'm like, I don't really know what you sleeping has to do with who was on the phone, but I don't believe what you're telling me. I go back out. I'm watching TV, seething for probably like another 2 hours.
Why'd you call the landline?
Because evidently he wasn't answering his cell phone because it was off because he was sleeping. So when I go back to bed, I waited like enough time that in my mind, I'm like, he's asleep now because it's been a long time now that I've been back in the living room.
Wait, in that moment, did your stomach know something? Like, were you like,
I was like, I'm out.
Like, did you know that this was more? Like,
yes.
You had an inkling before this phone call, or were you ever like, are you maybe seeing someone?
Yeah. No, like, I feel like all of the women out there who always talk about how they didn't know, they all know. They just haven't admitted it to themselves.
That's right. Okay.
So yes, I like knew right away. And that's why I was seething, because I was like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do here. I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
So I go back into the room when he should have been sleeping, and he wasn't sleeping. And that to me was the final piece, because
he was sitting in bed pooping his pants.
He was freaking out.
Totally.
Could he have convinced you?
Nope. I woke up the next morning with no further information and said to him, I want a divorce.
What do you say?
What are you talking about? Like denying, that's not what it was. What do you mean? What do you mean? Like freaking out. I left for work. I called from the car and I was like, we're done. I don't believe what you're telling me, and that's enough for me.
I think
I'm out.
I think I can piece the relationship together based on like what was happening. Like you saying, like I went to work, like you were probably like passing ships. Like it wasn't like a great relationship up into that phone call.
Not when we were, I don't know how to articulate this, but a lot of people listening may relate. When we were alone together in the apartment, it was like not a lot of communication. Like for me, I was like, I wanted to like peel my skin off. But when we were out socially, we like had a great time together. Like when there were buffers around, it was great. We'd been together for 18 years in total.
Wow.
And I was 36. So it was literally half my life that we were together. So we had a lot still going. And for people who are curious, yes, we were still having sex. Yeah. So like, but it was just, I felt like the communication had totally broken down. So it wasn't like, I wasn't happy overall, but it was like I almost didn't know how unhappy I was.
Yeah.
Would you still be together, you think, if you hadn't found out?
No, because I think he's gone on. I think he's proven that that's sort of his pattern. I think if I hadn't found out then, I think ultimately I would have found out about someone else.
Okay.
So then, Jessica, you call up TH. How much longer after you find out?
Probably that day. Probably on my way to work. Like, I'm getting divorced.
And now, TH, you're like obviously trying to like comfort your friend. Are you thinking, is my husband doing this too? Or are you thinking, no, this is Darren?
I got to be honest. I was a shell of a person at that point in time. I was not recognizable to who I am today. I functioned. I existed. My kids, I had an 8, 6, and 4-year-old. Everybody up. Everybody get dressed, go to school. I go to work. I pick you up. We come home. You're in bed. We're safe. Let's do it again. And that was all I did. And my ex was never home. Ever. He traveled all the time, which is how he covered his like extra 4-year affair.
Both 4 years?
Happier when he wasn't.
So I don't think mine was 4 years, but I know that it was 2 while I was pregnant with my daughter.
Yeah.
So
These are special exes. These are very special people.
Are they special though? Or is there so many like this?
I think mine is definitely special. I think a lot of people think that their ex is like mine. Everybody likes the word narcissist, like, such a narcissist or this or that. And everybody's looking to point a finger, but mine is legit. And I actually I get like upset sometimes. Use that word. So, easily, because there's like a huge recovery that comes on the other side of that. And it has nothing to do with him. And it has everything to do with me and dealing with him like for as long as I'm alive.
TH, Jess, were you watching your best friend like fall? Like, could you see, or were you guys so in the weeds you couldn't see each other falling apart?
Yeah, we were so in the weeds, and we were together all the time with our kids and stuff like that. But I mean, we just had so much going on. No, we just weren't, like TH said, we weren't really talking about it.
You were in you didn't see her like fall apart. You weren't like, oh my God, you're not okay.
You had all this going on, and you had all these young kids, and you both had careers.
Yeah, right. In fact, the day that happened with Darren and I, so it was a Thursday night was the call, and then Friday was the day that I was like, I'm leaving you. On Monday, I was starting a brand new job, like the biggest job of my career to that point, which for me ended up being a saving grace.
Yeah.
Because I went in and I was like, motoring through. I did not even have an extra second to even be thinking about or dealing with that. I just was compartmentalizing and getting through it. I spent that first weekend crying for 48 hours in bed. And then I got up and I went to my new job, and I just was like focused on killing it.
How did you, I have so many questions as a parent, but I want to get to that after I ask, how did you guys put together the pieces that idiot 1 and idiot 2?
So when I found out, first of all, I have to say, the universe worked in my favor. That whole day was the universe, like putting people where they belong. My parents were in Egypt. It's the perfect place for my mother to be. The last thing I needed to hear was, I told you, I knew it. You should have this, you should have that. So she was all the way in Egypt. After I got my kids mobilized, my brother and sister-in-law came up and helped me. And I then called this woman back. And I was like, all right, we got to talk.
Now, and he doesn't know that you know right now. Your husband does not know that you know.
I know anything. He was lying. He said he was in New York City. I mean, he just lied. And it was
fucking proposed to her?
Yes. I mean, this is special. This is what I'm saying. I don't think most men are capable of doing what my special
maybe pilots. That was mean.
Maybe who?
Pilots.
Maybe. So anyway, she started piecing things together. Like I started going through my bills. A lot of people are like deal with financial abuse. I mean, that wasn't my job. I wasn't paying the bills. So I wasn't looking at everything because I had my role and he had his role.
Mm-hmm.
So then I start going through the credit cards and I'm going over stuff with her and I'm like, shit, like, do you have a credit card? What is this from Costco? And hence that was her ring was from Costco. And so then all the other stuff came out and I was like, you have no idea. So she was breaking up with him. I then spend the weekend really going through the credit cards because he's just not that smart, or he like really
doesn't care.
Kind of delusional.
You weren't delusional
looking. Anyway, like to not track things. So that's how it all came out. Then I called Jessica. I'm like, Jessica, I see the charge for Costa Rica. It's at the Four Seasons for like a week. You weren't there with guys. Who goes to the Four Seasons, Costa Rica, with a bunch of guys? Nobody. And she confirmed that. Did
both of those women not know that those men were married?
Both of them knew that they were married.
Oh, okay.
Well,
both of them knew.
She said to me.
Oh, hers said that she didn't know in the beginning.
She said she knew I was married. And then when we sold our house, he showed that to her as proof of our divorce. Like she also,
really, you were just moving.
Just, not right.
So this was within 24 hours that you have your brother and your sister-in-law come in. You're going through, like, so you just had like the shock of your life, maybe not, but the blessing of your life. And you were like, oh my gosh, what was your theory of going through what was that control? Like, what was that for you that you had to go through? Like, what were you trying to do? What are you feeling in that moment? Are you like, now what? Or like, thank God, or I'm fucking out of here? Or like, what am I going to do?
No, it literally, I mean, the words that I said to her are real. Like she literally saved my life. That is what I said to her on the phone, on the carpool line. You just saved my life. But then I started piecing things together going through the credit cards. And I was like, still trying to convince myself of the magnitude of this. Like,
shock.
To somebody like, how am I married to somebody like this? The magnitude of the lies is what was so upsetting. I want to be married to him. My marriage was over way before the cheating, way before. And he was cheating on me for 4 years since my son was born. He's been with her as old as my son is. So now they're together 20 years.
TH, I have to ask you, would you still be with him if you hadn't got that phone? Okay. So because I think a lot of women have the feeling that you both said is you knew, but you didn't want to acknowledge it. Because if you talk about it, then it's real. So what?
Right.
Like
I had actually gone to see a few lawyers and I went to a therapist too. And she's like, listen, you can stay and eat shit or you can leave. But I was so insecure. I thought if I just did this differently, if I was just this way, because he's super controlling, then it would be all right. And like divorce, now I'm going to be like a horrible mom because I'm being selfish because I am miserable, but I've got 3 little kids. So I was like trying to unravel all of that. And I still stayed after that therapist. But I do like to believe that I was going to leave. Like for me to cry to my parents who were not, my mother in particular, clearly not supportive in the right way for me. Like I was definitely at my wit's end. It's just that she saved my life that day. You know, she called me and I'm like, wait, I'm not crazy. And he is bad. And I'm cool. Like I'm good. Okay.
For the people who like maybe don't have something happen where I think a lot of people want something to happen so they can leave. Like you guys are like, it's a blessing.
Yes.
Like what, I think you've described the feelings you had, but I feel like for the people, if I was getting a divorce, I feel like I would want to know, like, what do you need to know for, what would have made you leave? Like how long, like what is that courage? And how do you face the demons that you're feeling? And maybe you can't afford a therapist, but you're sitting there being like, I know this isn't right. Like, what do you wish you had known if you hadn't been told?
It feels so scary.
And so I'll get into that because like I said, I've been married and divorced twice, and there was no impetus like that in my second marriage. I left because I was like, we really are not compatible. And he's a great guy, and we are still close today. And I dog sit his dog all the time, who happens to be here now. Like, I used to think to myself, you know, at least I had a reason to leave the first time. It must be so much more painful for people to have to just come to the realization, like, this just isn't going to work anymore. And and even though it was a much shorter relationship and we didn't have the same kind of deep foundation the second time, it was really painful to have to acknowledge, like, this isn't going to work for us. So I think for people out there, I mean, you really, well, first of all, we are not advocates of divorce, but even though we do all this to help support people through it, we believe in the sanctity of marriage. Like, I would say to people out there, if you're not sure, I mean, first, either you alone or both of you should go to a marriage counselor and see whether or not there are issues that are not too far gone. Can you pull it back? There are people that stay together after infidelity. That's not for me, but, you know, God bless whoever wants to, you know, try to make that work. But I think that if you're not sure, then it means maybe there's still a chance. At the end of the day, anyone out there who's thinking about it, deep down in their gut, knows what the final answer is going to be. It just might take a while to get there because you have to emotionally prepare yourself. You have to figure out, especially women, like, what's the game plan? How am I going to do this? Where might I live? Am I going to have to get a job? Like, women want to kind of have the pieces together, but I think the knowledge of whether or not that's going to be the end result, if you're thinking about it, you know deep down, can I make it work or can I not? There doesn't have to be an impetus for it. I think that if you guys aren't doing anything at all together, you had asked us before about the walk-away wife syndrome, which is like a trend that people talk about in divorce. But the truth is,
what does that mean? What does that mean?
It's when women are basically disengaging from their marriages.
Okay.
You know,
they get prepared to leave, right? They're preparing emotionally.
Not hanging out as much. You're not intimate. Probably you may have been always making an effort to have them be able to connect with you in one way or another, or asking them to do certain things. And ultimately your partner, they don't ever do those things. And so you just stop asking and stop engaging. You've just kind of given up. And I think that no matter what the circumstances are for divorce, that's always the end phase for everyone. You've stopped investing yourself. For sake of, you know, stereotyping, the husband may be like, oh, great, she's not nagging me or asking me about this anymore. That means everything's good now. It doesn't. It just means that she's like, I'm checking out.
Yeah.
I've said to Natalie, I think the worst case scenario you can be in is when you don't care anymore.
That's
the
right.
minute you stop caring, whether they're mad, sad, upset, or happy, is the minute it's over. Yeah. I'm like, because if you're mad, you still care. If you're sad, you still care. If you're happy, you still care. You don't give a fuck. You're done. Like,
that's
it's right. Like, I don't really care, actually.
That's right.
Right. And honestly, a lot of people live that way. And I did live that way. And people make excuses why they can't leave also. I mean, fear is number one. That's why we do ExExperts, because the number one thing is to educate yourself. So once you start learning about what the options are, you can go to discernment therapy. The two of you, if you can have a conversation with your spouse and say, I'm not happy. We're not communicating anymore. Whatever the thing is, if you two can come together, discernment therapy is a great way to come together, kind of start fresh, and then move forward, because everybody grows at different paces, right? Like, I'm sure you guys have that in your relationships, and we have that with our girlfriends too, right? You grow out of some relationships and not others. So discernment therapy is really good. And we've also done a bunch of episodes on divorce, etc., about whether to stay or go, or to end or mend. And the one key thing that you might want to consider, other than your gut, is if you can't sit down with your spouse and say, I think we need to talk, then you really do know. I would never be able to have that conversation.
Yeah, if they're not willing to listen.
And
where's it going to go?
Engage in the important conversations.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't spoken to him in so long. I mean, we weren't even roommates. We were, I was a single married parent.
Why would he stay with you, do you think?
That's like the $1 million question. And then the $2 million question is, so she broke up with him when this all happened.
Why?
And then he went back because he lied to her family and all the things.
Oh my God.
I was
Amazing.
like, all right, I understand. And then he went back a month later because he was thinking, oh, I love you, TH. This is going to be great. I'll be the best husband ever. And I was like, yeah, you're so late on here.
Oh.
He flew back out to California with a bigger ring and she took it.
And they're together.
And they're married.
No.
And they have a 7-year-old.
And by the way, mine stayed. He also wanted to reconcile. I said out of
it's like
respect
a weird honeymoon
for
thing.
Our relationship, I will go with you to marriage counseling, even though I don't need to go to a marriage counselor for them to tell us that we should get divorced, because I already think we should get divorced. So we went to the therapist a couple of times. She was like, he needs to move back. I had to move out. She's like, he needs to move back in for at least 3 months, whatever. He moved back in for like a week. And I'm like, I can't do it. You're out. And he went back to the affair woman at the time. They ended up staying together for like another 10 years. 2 kids.
No, but say this. Okay. There's more.
When they never got married. When they were trying for the second kid, things were not great in their relationship. He started having another affair with someone in the Dominican Republic. Got them both pregnant at the same time.
No.
Darren. He has 5 kids. 2 are 6 months apart.
With 3
Darren,
kids.
is he single? Is he single right now?
No, he's in a relation. He's not with her anymore. He's in a relationship with a woman that he's been with now for 5 years.
Is he rich?
No.
Does the Dominican baby live in Dominican?
Yep.
Oh,
so when you were like, would you guys still be together? I don't think we would. I think that other things would have surfaced.
What happened to Darren? He was your best friend, TH. What happened to that boy?
Man, baby.
Fell off the tracks.
He walks into a room and he is incredibly charismatic. He walks in with an energy. He's very good looking. And everyone's like, oh my God. Like, it doesn't even matter what he says. If he's like standing near you, you're like, oh my God, we know better, clearly. But he likes being the center of attention, and it's Darren this and Darren that.
What does he think about? What do they think about you guys and the podcast? And what the hell are the children? Like, what's happening?
I love how you're just talking.
Was on the podcast a few weeks ago. Our last episode in December was TH interviewing Darren and I about like what went wrong and like what could have been better. Darren and I are very close today. This is what I'll say about, for me personally, people go through divorce differently.
Yeah.
When I was getting divorced, I knew in my head what I wanted the end game to look like, which was no tension for my kids, being able to hang out if we needed to, celebrating holidays together, that kind of stuff. Darren and I are close. We have a great relationship with regards to divorce. I feel like he owned once I was like, I'm really out. Like, you need to move out. I don't care. It doesn't even matter to me what you say because we're getting divorced anyway. The information started trickling out and he owned up to everything and he was extremely remorseful. He doesn't deny what happened. He doesn't deny his part in it. He doesn't deny the affair and all of that. So for divorce, etc. and whatever, like, he's like, go ahead. I mean, I really feel strongly like this is my story to tell. Anyone who writes an autobiography, I mean, it's unfortunate if there's like, collateral damage around, but I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, this is my life and this is my story. And by sharing it, there are other people out there listening, thinking like, like you guys, holy shit, you're fucking kidding me. Or other people being like, wow, I thought what I had was really bad. Or they can relate. And it's like hearing what other people go through make all of us stronger.
Because I think also when you guys talk about it is you end up giving women permission to not be ashamed, because I think so often divorce feels like a failure rather than something that, is an event and it takes 2 people and it's such a like, I'm getting divorced. Like, and everyone's like, oh my God.
But especially like, being cheated on is so humiliating.
Yeah.
That
and
all
of our friends knew.
For me.
All of our friends knew.
What do you mean?
So
people knew that they were cheating and didn't tell us.
Right. They didn't tell us. They didn't tell us.
If you have a friend, so if in that situation, if you have a friend and would you have really appreciated a call from a friend?
So all of
I
my
think I
close
would.
friends in Jersey were telling me he was cheating.
Oh,
And like I said to you guys, I was a shell of a person. If I didn't hear what you said, then it wasn't real. So I literally was like armor. Like I said, it was robotic. The kids are safe. I am home. He's not here. So I can think, I can breathe. But if you listen to what people are saying, then it's like, oh my God, now you're opening up like Pandora's box. Like I'm not ready for that.
Do you think
friends were all saying it to me?
Okay. Do you think if financially you didn't have your own jobs and you were reliant on them for everything, you would have been maybe have tried had to stay? So scared?
You know, it's hard. It's always hard. Who knows in whatever situation. Yeah. I would like to think that going back to the whole, like, you always know, even if you don't know. When we broke up, my kids were 2 and 4. It had been going on for quite a while before that. I think for whatever reason, in my own head, I wasn't ready to go down that path. At that time, when my kids were 2 and 4, for whatever reason, I was ready. I was I mean, like, that's the only way I can really describe it. So, like, I don't know, if I didn't have my job, would I have been? I'm not sure. My parents have been, are there for me and have been able to help out if and when I need it. So I did have a career, and
your situation,
I was lucky. But I feel like I don't know. I would like to think that there would have come a point at which I would have felt strong enough to be able to walk away. But I'm scrappy. Like, I'll do whatever I need to do. And
Jessica's got like 4 jobs. Yeah, she's got like 4 jobs. I'm not even.
Are you obviously not on good terms with your ex? Like, what is that situation with your ex?
So I handle business. So like I was saying before, like there was like a weird honeymoon stage where he was like the greatest man in his mind. So I dragged him to my therapist. And because I wanted her to tell us how we were going to tell the kids, because he was doing whatever I said then. I was like, we're going here, we're going there. This time he's like, okay. Right. So he leaves that session and she pulls me back and she said, okay, so do you know what a narcissist is?
Oh, wow.
No. She said, well, he is a narcissistic sociopath. And so your divorce is going to suck. And what we're going to work on now is how to decipher fact from noise. He has so much control over you that you don't have a voice. So, at the beginning, he was texting me 24/7. This was all my fault, by the way, apparently, right? If I told him not to get on the plane, he would never have carried on this affair. If I had done, which was all the same kind of like mind fucking, that my whole marriage was, it was all the brainwashing. There is gaslighting. All these things are real. I want all of you to know also out there who are listening to us, and then I'll go back to it. But, Jessica and I are clear, shining lights for what your life can be, but it's not been easy. Yeah. It's not been easy for many reasons. Darren and Jessica, get along really well. You were asking what our exes think about this. I won't say my ex's name. Look, my kids know, they're watching us on TikTok, they're like little fans, but, and they're super proud of us. I think all of our kids are really proud of us, but because we're making a difference, we're paying it forward, but this has taken time, especially being married for me to someone like I was married to. Listen, I married my mother, but my mother loves me. And I had to deal with her, right? Now he's gone. Now she's still around. So it's a lot of accountability on yourself. So you got to you got to swallow the pill and be like, okay, so why did I let somebody treat me like that? Why did I put myself in this position? Nobody forced me. Yeah. Right. So as soon as you start taking responsibility for your actions in the marriage, I could blame him for 99, and I can't. I can blame him for 90% of it. But there's 10% that's on me. I didn't have to stay. I could have stood up for myself and said, I'm not taking this anymore. I deserve better. A million things. But I didn't. And so that all unravels. So I handle business with him, which is what my therapist taught me to do. You set up very strict boundaries. There is no more
TH, we're going to kick this over to the common parent because I think that this is really like the keys to how parents need to handle it with their kids. I mean, like with the person in their life who they have to deal with forever. And I think what you're saying is so valuable, even in relationships with your parents, with the people in your life who cause you, pain when you have to negotiate with them. And everyone can find you if you're listening to the podcast. We will link everywhere. And if you want to hear how you can handle dealing with parents in your life forever or people in your life forever, because that is a choice you don't really have. You're going to give us some tips on how to help navigate this with kids, because no one really talks about the pain of when it's not just 50-50 and easy peasy like you and Darren.
It's not always easy for them either. It's not.
We have our shows.
Right.
Jessica, we did an episode titled Narcissist versus Asshole.
That was a 2-part.
They're not hers is a narcissist. Mine's just an asshole. Everybody has their issues. There's a reason we're divorced.